I had 3 discussions with the president that I can recall. One was on November 23rd, one was on December 1st, and one was on December 14th. And I've been through sort of the give and take of those discussions. And in that context, I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bull. And, I didn't want to be a part of it. And that's one of the reasons that went into me deciding to leave when I did. I observed, I think it was on December 1st, that, how can you can't live in a world where the incumbent administration stays in power based on its view, unsupported by specific evidence, that there was fraud in the election.
Trump's former Attorney General Bill Barr, who essentially served as a lapdog for Donald Trump during his administration, apparently felt like lying about the election being stolen from Trump was just a little too far for him. So he testified during the investigation done by the House Select Committee on what transpired on January 6th and made it abundantly clear that he had pushed back against Trump's lies in regard to the election allegedly being stolen. Now, it turns out that someone within Trump's family agreed with Bill Barr and even testified as much. Let's take a look.
How did that affect your perspective about the election when Attorney General Barr made that statement?
It affected my perspective. I respect Attorney General Barr. So I accepted what he was saying.
She accepted what he was saying. And look, to be frank, she said the bare minimum there. But the bare minimum was enough to trigger her daddy, Donald Trump, because after all, Ivanka is his favorite, and all of a sudden she's throwing, in his view, I'm sure she's throwing him under the bus. So on Truth Social, he tweets, Ivanka Trump was not involved in looking at or studying election results. She had long since checked out and was, in my opinion, only trying to be respectful to Bill Barr and his position as Attorney General, and then in parentheses, in typical Trump fashion, he sucked. And by the way, I too enjoy being referred to with first and last name when my father is talking about me,
Yeah, no, that's Anna. I think that might actually be important. He didn't call her Ivanka Kushner. He didn't call her Ivanka. He called her by her maiden name, Ivanka Trump. I think that was his way of emphasizing, remember which family you're a part of, Ivanka. Of course, at the same time, hey, knucklehead, she already testified a long time ago. That was on tape. It's not like you can intimidate your own daughter by emphasizing the last name now. And so, but the fact that he's at the very, very core, right? So he throws everyone under the bus. And most of all his own voters. I mean, he treats them as suckers and losers. And but then when you get into his inner circle, he's fired almost everybody in his circle. When he brings them in, he goes, they're right out of central casting, brilliant, awesome. They realize he's a lunatic. They say, I'm sorry, I can't do the illegal things you want me to do. They leave and he's like, a loser, idiot, he sucked, okay? But we said, look, and in fact, even with his 2 sons, well, he's got another son too, but he's not a grown up. With Eric and Don Jr., he has said in private before, reported by others, that they're idiots, right? So he doesn't mind saying that either. By the way, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But Ivanka was the golden child. Now he's even throwing her under the bus. I mean, he didn't pay Rudy Giuliani's bills. Rudy's pissed after Rudy did everything for him. Bill Barr got him through the first impeachment. He lied about the Mueller report about him. Bill Barr did everything that was asked of him. And at the end, Trump's like, okay, why don't you lie, destroy our democracy, and just make me king? And Barr's like, man, I really, really wanted a strong executive, but that's a bridge too far even for me. Okay.
Oh, we see what you did there.
and of course he's under the bus now. Ivanka's under the bus. The only people who haven't wisened up to what a maniac Donald Trump is are his voters. I mean, look, we just yesterday we covered how Betsy DeVos, Mike Pence, and others in the cabinet discussed declaring him a lunatic and using the 25th Amendment to take away his powers as president because he was too dangerously mentally unstable.
It also seemed like he was, in my view, that he was lying about Ivanka because his argument is, oh no, she wasn't really paying attention. She wasn't involved in tracking the evidence. And from what I've heard, Jared Kushner and Ivanka were very involved, at least in the first couple of days after the election, in trying to determine, was there really fraud? I mean, they were getting it, and Ivanka was getting it from her brothers and all sorts of people who were talking about, hey, maybe something was awry here. But they were convinced pretty quickly, no, Dad really lost. And the idea that they would sort of come to this conclusion and then have it reinforced by Bill Barr, that's too much for Donald Trump. His own daughter clearly couldn't have been paying any attention because otherwise, no, she was paying attention. She and Jared Kushner came to a clear conclusion that was the right conclusion. It just wasn't what Donald Trump wanted to hear.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. And what I was curious about was, okay, considering that Bill Barr really did carry out, did do Trump's bidding throughout, his tenure within the Trump administration, how is Trump going to explain away Bill Barr's decision to give that testimony? And this is what he said, again, in another unhinged rant on Truth Social. He writes, Bill Barr was a weak and frightened attorney general who was always being played, in quotation marks, and threatened by the Democrats and was scared stiff of being impeached. How do you not get impeached? Do nothing or say nothing, especially about the obviously rigged and stolen election, or to put it another way, the crime of the century. So his argument is, well, Bill Barr wanted to protect his position of power within my administration by speaking out against me. By the way, he also stepped down on his own. It makes no sense, but the thing is, it doesn't need to make sense, right? Trump is actually pretty masterful in communicating in a way that is easy to understand and has the exact kind of insults that provide everything that his supporters need to justify the illogical argument that Trump is making. And it's really devastating, right? And this is the reason why I don't understand anyone who thinks they're savvy enough to thread that needle, to suck up to Trump to a point where they can accumulate power for themselves and think that they can somehow escape the inevitable fate of Trump turning on them once that person decides to tweak something Trump has said, or maybe push back a little bit, just gently, on something Trump has done.
Yeah, I mean, I think historians, psychologists, sociologists, even anthropologists will study this phenomenon that Trump just bulldozes with lies. He doesn't care about any of the facts. He doesn't care if it's his own daughter, if it's his biggest protector. He will lie about everyone and everything, and he'll lie in such an over-the-top way, and it totally works. He had what, 73 million Americans vote for him, and now to this day, the overwhelming majority of Republicans, that's in the hundreds of millions of people, say, yeah, I believe only Donald Trump. The one guy who's the most obvious liar, almost literally in American history. I say almost, but I shouldn't. I can't think of anyone who has lied at the scale of Donald Trump, not even close. And politicians are all liars, and he put them all to shame combined. And the fact that people believe it is just a testament to a bad part of our nature that will believe anything if we want to believe it. But guys, one more thing that's really important here. These hearings are showing you important things like Bill Barr's testimony, even Ivanka saying, yeah, I think he lost the election, I believe Bill Barr. But if at the end of the day, they don't have accountability for the people who actually organized this coup, and I'm not talking about Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, they were never gonna hold that building. What they did was terrible. It was definitely a crime. It was over the top violent. They should all be prosecuted for it. But they were not gonna hold that building. The real coup was the fake electors. And so they last night in the hearings laid out the 7 things that they are going to prove. And they are going to talk about the fake electors. Jake Tapper reported on that today in terms of the specifics of the 7-part plan. If they had gotten Pence to kick the certification back to the states, they had fake electors ready at the states. If they do not arrest the people who came up with that plan, and by their own admission, it appears to be Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon. And guys, look, this is not about personal bias. Like, for example, I loathe Stephen Miller. He's one of the worst people ever. He was in the Trump administration. He did the immigration policies. He did the most racist and bigoted policies. So far, I haven't seen any evidence that connects him to this plot. So would I want him randomly arrested because I don't agree with him politically? Absolutely not. That would destroy the rule of law. We should never do that. But if Navarro and Bannon are going around saying, oh yeah, I did it. I'm the one who came up with the Green Bay sweep for the fake elector plan. For God's sake, if you don't arrest them, and if they have evidence connecting them to Trump, yes, they should definitely arrest Trump. Under that circumstance, let's see what they have in the rest of the hearings. But if you don't do it, then you're saying green light, next time you're in charge, break any law you want. Do not ever leave the White House. Use force, use violence, break the law, and destroy our democracy. At the end of the day, if the hearings send that message because they take no action, it'll have been counterproductive.
And that's where I think the next group to watch, the next institution to watch is the Department of Justice, because it does seem, Jen, to your point, whether it's Steve Bannon or whether it's Stephen Miller or whether it's Peter Navarro or whether it is Donald Trump, the hearing is whatever analogy you want to use, alley-oop, putting it on a silver platter. The evidence is there. They are putting Donald Trump at the heart of a criminal conspiracy. And if the Department of Justice doesn't take this evidence and at least present it to a grand jury, then you're absolutely right. The Department of Justice is essentially giving a green light to this happening again.